Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the first episode of the Better Leader podcast in 2025. Coming to y'all in February because in January, my wife and I just had our fourth child, our baby girl, Lucy. So it was a little bit of a busy month, but excited to be back and bringing y'all content for the rest of 2025. And today we're going to be talking about 3 leadership principles. And the first one is breaking the ice. Breaking the ice. Now, I'm not talking about an icebreaker game that you would play at the beginning of a meeting or for team building, even though I am odd and do like those games. What we're talking about is the principle of starting the hard projects. There's all for whatever industry you're in, wherever you're doing, whatever your to-do list looks like, there are certain projects that you know as you look at them, they're going to take a lot of legwork to get done. It's going to be hard to get started, and then it might be hard as you continue through it. Now, why I call this breaking the ice is because it makes me think of the ships that are actually responsible in colder climates for breaking the ice that sits on top of the ocean. And these ice-breaking ships actually, at a slow pace, very methodically and consistently break the ice to open up shipping lanes for other vessels or for safe passage for other vessels. Now, there's certain projects that you're going to do which they're slow moving and they're going to require a lot of consistent and maybe monotonous effort, but the reward and the payoff is going to be worth it. Now, recently in my setting, I've had a project that's been like this where I was really responsible for hunting down a manufacturer who could make us a specific product and then would be able to program it to do a specific thing on the back end. And now the hard part of this was kind of a niche thing. And also we're in terms of a mass order, it wasn't a mass order for our organization compared to what some of these businesses would do. And so what I was hunting for was a manufacturer who not only had the skill and the ability to make it look a certain way and function a certain way, but also could really take direction and kind of create a new product for them. And so I knew in engaging in this, it was going to be a lot of legwork. And truly this was from start to finish, from producing artwork for it to getting the end product. It took a lot of effort. But now I look at the payoff that's going to be there. It's going to be such a benefit to our organization. And so you have to kind of hype yourself up a little bit to do these types of projects. It's not one that you just sit down and you're like, I can't wait to work on that. You're going to have to make some phone calls. You're going to have to track people down. These projects matter a lot though. And every organization needs people, a lot of people, who will be consistent in breaking the ice. And when we look at these ships that do this, they're consistent. They're methodical. They don't stop. They continue to attack the ice and break it. And I think that this is kind of how we approach these projects on our to-do list. Maybe for you, you're changing your HR dashboard and you got to completely redo something. Maybe you're bringing on a completely new team of people. You're redoing your website, or you're changing the way you do sales and invoicing. Whatever it is that you're doing, and it might take a lot of legwork, it's gonna be worth it. But I think there's 2 things we can do to make these projects happen, to actually get them done. The first is put it at the beginning of your day. Oftentimes it's easiest to do the hardest thing first. And so with this project that I just was able to start to see to the finish, I knew that there was going to have to be a specific time in my day I had planned early on where I was going to attack this, because as the day gets going, I needed to be able to have this hardest thing done first. It was going to require some thought and some energy. So I needed to attack it early. And then I knew I needed to have the consistency even when I got told no by certain manufacturers, or I couldn't find the right price point, whatever it is, I knew I had to have the consistency to keep going. So we need to have consistency to keep going, and we also need to just keep plugging away at it. And I think it helps if you do these things early. But every organization, man, we need people who are going to break the ice and push things forward. Many of the tasks that we do on a weekly basis, they aren't hard, they aren't challenging, but everybody has those things that will push your business, your organization forward, which are going to take a lot of legwork at the front end. But you and I both know that it's totally worth it to do these things. So my challenge to you is this, is what is the thing that you've been putting off or that you don't want to start because you know how much energy investment it's going to take? Go ahead and attack that thing. And at the end of the day, 3 months from now, 5 months from now, next year, you're going to be happy that you broke the ice and that you begin to sledge ahead forward and make it happen. So break the ice. The second thing I want to talk about today is actually a lesson I really learned from my son Cash, who is 4 years old. And I wish I could come to y'all and tell you that, man, every day I'm a great father. But, over the last, about a month ago, I was really just struggling with my son. He's 4 years old. He's got high emotion, and he's just in that stage where he wants to do things on his own, but he also needs a lot of help. And I just felt like I was at odds with him. He and I were just butting heads. We were not seeing eye to eye on things. And I remember taking my wife aside and saying, like, I am just struggling with Cash right now. And I just was finding fault in a lot of the things he was doing. And for me, I just kind of recognized, and honestly, for me, it was through prayer that I recognized, I'm a big part of the problem. As I started to look at kind of the interactions I had lately, I realized I'm the one who's been impatient. I'm the one who has been short-tempered, who has really not been forgiving or empathetic towards my son. And I realized that's where a lot of our tension was started. Now, my son was not perfect. He's 4 years old. There's things that he wasn't handling well and that he could be doing better. But as I started to look at this situation, I realized a lot of the problem was starting with me and how I was choosing to interact. And so as I kind of reshaped and thought again about how I was interacting and kind of took a step back, I'm very thankful for this, because as I started to look at myself, I realized where I was going wrong in the interactions. And it's been really cool to see over the last month, I've really recognized, man, we've had some really sweet moments as a father and son. And I think this wouldn't have happened. This wouldn't have been the case if I didn't take a step back in my frustration and look at, what do I need to work on? What do I need to work on? Where am I going wrong? And I always believe that the way we lead our family bleeds over into the way we lead the people we work with. And so as I start to look at that and think about that, I recognize that, we are all in the people business. If you're a leader, you're in the people business. You're working with people. It's so easy to look at the deficiencies that someone else has, or maybe where they're falling short or how they're falling short. And we can focus on those things. And part of our job is to correct people and to give feedback and to set a good culture. But what I've recognized is often when I am frustrated with someone else, I really need to look at myself first. Not to say that they don't need to change as well, but when I'm looking at someone else who is struggling or has a deficiency in an area, I need to evaluate, how am I doing in that area? How am I leading? Am I helping to set a good example? Am I leading well and evaluating, okay, where do I need to grow? Where do I need to improve in my leadership or the way that I'm handling a situation or carrying myself? And I think this is really important, because when you are a leader, people will begin to look to you for answers to situations and problems. And because of this, sometimes you can become the answer man or the answer woman. You've got a solution and situation to everything. You know how everyone needs to act and interact, and it's your job to solve problems, to look for problems. And this is, part of what comes with the territory. But if you're not careful, what it can create in you is a little bit, at least for me, it can develop a critical spirit where I'm looking at other people's flaws, but I'm not looking at myself. And so what I've wanted to do lately, and what I felt challenged to do, is when I am frustrated with someone else, when I feel there is tension in a situation, I often want to take a step back, because I learned this with my son. I need to take a step back and see, where do I need to improve? Where can I grow? What in this situation can I own? And how can I set a better example as well? Now, that's not to say that as a leader, no one else has flaws and you shouldn't point them out. That's actually one of the best skills that a leader can bring to the table, is being able to help people grow and giving them a pathway for feedback and encouragement and all of those things. But also, we need to take a look at ourselves. And I've often found that starting by looking at myself first is really a beginning point before I need to go and address problems. And so just like I failed to do that with my son, I don't want to keep failing to do that in my family, my marriage, my relationships, but I also want to do that in my place of work and with the people I lead. I want to look at myself first and evaluate, where do I need to grow? So we're going to look at ourselves first and evaluate what it is that we can own and where we can grow. Last thing I want to talk about today is the importance of skill. And I've talked about this a little bit lately on a couple of different occasions. And we talked recently in an episode how high skill and high work ethic, a strong work ethic and high skill leads to a lot of influence. But one of the other things that high skill does when you develop your skills is it builds confidence with the people you lead. Let me give you this example. I mentioned that my wife and I, we just had our fourth child, and the anesthesiologist who was responsible for administering the epidural to my wife, I just noticed when he came in the room, he had a lot of confidence because he had a lot of skill. This is something that he went to school for, he's engaged in on a regular basis, and it was really interesting and unique to hear him explain the process of what was going to happen when the epidural was administered. And he had this confidence in the way that he spoke, and he explained the science behind what was going to happen. He answered some of my wife's questions, and this confidence that he had helped to make us feel at ease and to trust what was happening in the situation. Now, it's important to note he wasn't arrogant. He didn't come in with this sense of, I know everything and nobody else knows anything. He treated the nurses with respect. He treated my wife and I with respect. He listened to our questions. And so he had this humility about him, but he was very confident and assertive in what he was doing. And then as I watched him work, it was so cool to just see this skill that he had, that you could tell he cared about what he was doing. He had practiced it and he cared about what he was doing. And so I watched this doctor with a high level of skill, and what it did is it kind of put everyone in the room at ease, because skill level still matters. Now, I think back in ancient times, for lack of a better word, when you looked at craftsmen, and as they developed these skills, whether it was a silversmith or a cobbler or shoemaker, whatever it was, is this skill was very tangible. You could really see it. And now I think we live in a world where oftentimes the work that we are doing, it's not as outwardly seen, but that doesn't mean that we don't develop skills still. I don't care what industry you're in, whether you speak on a regular basis, or you're a teacher, you're an accountant, you're in HR, human resources, whatever it is that you do, there's skills within your setting that you need to develop. If you're in sales, you need to learn to talk to people more effectively. You need to grow in your understanding of what it is you're trying to sell, your industry, your product, so you can provide better solutions to your clients. If you're in education, it's learning how to better teach a certain skill. Or I think of when I was coaching, it's learning more about a certain offense or play calling style in football. In the higher skill you have, it breeds trust and confidence with your team. All that to say, skills really still matter. And I think that naturally we often gravitate towards wanting to work on a skill that is a weakness for us, because we want to get better at the things we don't feel good at. And I do believe that's a great thing. But what I want to challenge you with is, where do you feel like you're already highly skilled at? Maybe for you, it's making videos or marketing, social media. I don't know what it is. What do you feel highly skilled at already? Is it interacting with people and leading teams? Whatever it is, how can you get better at that skill? What's that like little fine-tuning niche thing that you're looking for that you can get better at that will help to propel you forward? Because skills, high levels of skill, help breed confidence with the people that we are leading. And so what are the three things we've covered? We've covered, first, we've looked at really what it looks like to start the projects that are hard to start, and being an icebreaker, pushing forward and clearing a path so that systems can be developed later. The second thing we've talked about is looking internally at ourselves first and foremost when problems arise, and evaluating, where do we need to grow? And lastly, it's developing skill, because skill leads to confidence and trust with the people that we lead. Hopefully there's something you can implement in your leadership immediately today, or something that you're thinking about. But that's it for today's episode of the Better Leader Podcast, and I can't wait to catch y'all the rest of the year. See you next time.